They back out of it. Hurts needs 11. Over the middle. Tip. Incomplete. San Francisco takes over. Looking to take away the upset.
The defending champs are gone and done. Kyle Shanahan, so good. Would have been nice to have him as our head coach after his dad retired here. Good morning, everybody. What a weekend of NFL playoff football. The best in reality TV. The first 4 of the 6 wildcard games decided on the final drive of the game. The first 4 produced, listen to this, 12 fourth quarter lead changes. Pure cinema. That's what NFL football was this weekend. Last night's 5th game out of the 6 wildcard games was the only true one-sided game, even though it went into the fourth quarter as a one-score game. And we've got one more to go. Pittsburgh and Houston tonight in Pittsburgh. So many wild finishes, so many clutch performances, so many questionable coaching decisions, so many moments of questionable analysis by lead analysts and play-by-play voices. See poor Al Michaels and Tony Romo for examples of that. We'll get into all of that this morning. We'll obviously get to the hiring of David Blau as the team's offensive coordinator here. That happened after the show on Friday. But here to start, we're going to get into all 5 of the NFL playoff games that were played over the weekend. It was a great weekend. Now, a lot of you have taken some shots at your boy for this weekend. 0-4, Max.
Oh, no.
0-4.
It all comes falling apart in the playoffs.
With Pittsburgh +3 pending tonight. The first and only bad weekend of the entire season. And I got this. This is a beauty from Jimmy. Jimmy writes, please don't take this the wrong way. I love when people say, please don't take this the wrong way, or, no offense. Of course, you're about to offend me. Jimmy writes, please don't take this the wrong way. But I think it's much easier to pick winners during the regular season. Your playoff picks were so bad, total choke job. Not sure why I didn't think about that before the game started, so I could have gone against your picks. That's a beauty, Jimmy. That's a good one. I actually can't figure out, and I'm being serious, he might be joking. This might be a joke tweet. But if it isn't, it's the dumbest take of all of the responses I got about my picks this weekend. I mean, it's all about what have you done for me lately, baby? That is, forget the 64.3% for 18 weeks, 19 weeks. It's about what have you done for me lately? Jimmy, in case you're being serious, just so you know, there's literally no difference in odds of winning or losing between the regular season and the playoffs. There's no difference literally in odds in preseason and playoffs. There's no change to whether or not it is, the same odds of winning in the postseason, regular season. They're the exact same. But yeah, you should have listened to yourself and not me and ignored my plays this weekend. By the way, it's a really good thing, Max, because I was 0-4 with still one game pending, Pittsburgh tonight. But I'm telling you, hold on, where's the list? I had another 3 plays that I almost gave out, and they would have all lost. Eagles, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Rams, Panthers under, and what was the other one that would have lost? Oh, no, the other one was Packers, Bears over, so that would have actually won. Those were the other 3. So it would have been, overall, it would have been 1-6, which is worse than 0-4, because you've lost 5 ways instead of 4 ways. Pittsburgh +3 tonight. I'd probably listen to Jimmy. Playoff games are much harder to handicap than regular season games. The funny thing about it is, and somebody mentioned this to me last week, somebody who basically documents all my picks. The guy's name is Sylvester, I think. And Sylvester, I appreciate that you document all my picks going back years now. Like he gave me the breakdown of college versus pro, certain teams, the whole thing. But I'm almost positive all of the data is wrong. Like there were like 3 major things in your very, very long email about the smell test to me about 3 or 4 weeks ago that I just know are wrong. But I appreciate that you're interested enough. But he pointed out that my playoff record, just like my March Madness record, has been better over the years than my regular season record. That is pure chance. There's nothing different about the postseason in terms of odds of winning or losing. Most of you know that. And I think Jimmy probably knows that as well. All right, let's get to the games. I wanted to start with the Philadelphia game, in part because I have to start with A.J. Brown. That was one of the most gutless performances in a big game I've seen by a big-time player in a long, long time. He was borderline looking like he was on the take in that game. You know, when Sirianni came down the sideline and yelled at him in the first half after he made another very half-hearted attempt to catch a deep ball from Jalen Hurts, both of those balls were catchable. Both of the efforts to catch the football were embarrassingly terrible. I mean, they just didn't look like a dude that wanted to catch the football, that wanted to lay out in a playoff game. And then the drop on the final drive was embarrassing. So embarrassing. Like this, he's done in Philly. I mean, this has been coming kind of all season long, but I think he really hurt himself yesterday in terms of a new spot. Look, we can, look at the Philadelphia Eagles and what they've been all year long, and it once again reared its, very ugly head yesterday in the game. Their offense is so predictable. It's just, there's nothing creative about it. They don't scheme people open. They're very predictable. There's just, they don't throw the ball consistently over the middle. Now, they lost a lot of their offensive line. It was not the same offensive line that it was last year. It's a new offensive coordinator. There's no way Kevin Patullo's coming back. No chance. But they've had a team here for a few years, I guess, offensively. I guess you could say for a few years that they've had a team offensively where it's like, we're not going to trick you. We're not going to out-scheme you. But we've just got better players. We've got a great offensive line. We've got a great running back. We've got 2 great receivers. We've got an excellent tight end. And our guys are just going to make plays. And you're not going to be able to stop us, even though you are going to know 8 times out of 10 what we're doing. Well, because of the offensive line issues, and then because of a guy like A.J. Brown, who just bailed on the game yesterday. You can't beat a team that's wounded and in trouble themselves and lost another key player, George Kittle, torn Achilles. Devastating for the 49ers. But a much better coach team, you need your better players to play at least to their level. They don't need to exceed it. I can't I mean, when Sirianni came down, I couldn't believe Strahan at halftime ripping Sirianni. I'm like, did you see A.J. Brown not even try to lay out and make either one of those 2 catches that were pretty well-thrown balls by Jalen Hurts? He's done, and I think he hurt himself in terms of his next opportunity. Now, there's a lot of dead cap money there for Philadelphia to eat, so that could play into the decision-making here. But I can't remember the last time I saw a big name, big, talent who's done it before look that terrible, look that disinterested. That was the worst part of it, is he just didn't look like he wanted to participate in the game. But, man, when they got down there, I'll tell you what, too, at the end, I mean, I'm sure, like many of you, I was wanting Nick Sirianni to be able to rest his starters this coming week. I didn't want them to win. There's just something about him and that team that just rubs me the wrong way. Now, their defense is awesome. And they gave up some big plays yesterday, but if they had had an offense yesterday, they win that game. If the offense is just okay. And Barkley rushed for over 100 yards. But at the end of that game, when they were down there, I kept thinking to myself, they've got 3 timeouts left. They can run the football. It's what they've done the best. And in a red zone situation, condensed field, typically you have to run the football, especially when you're Philadelphia and you don't scheme stuff up. You know, sure, you can take a couple of shots to the sidelines on fades, etc. They didn't run the football once when they got down there. There was like a minute 30 left. They had all 3 timeouts. They were 1st and 10 at the 49er 20, I think it was, on that final drive. Like, Hurts made a couple of really good plays. He had that throw to Goddard on 4th and 5, 4th and 6. That was a big-time throw. And then, you know, he threw to Devontae Smith, and all of a sudden, they're down there. Let's see. Yeah, 1st and 10 at the 20. Pass, he got sacked. He actually was working his way back up into the pocket. They called a sack. It was either a no-yard gain or a 1-yard loss. Then, you know, incomplete, that 4th and 11, and they called the timeout before the 4th and 11. They had to have that timeout before that play. They had to keep their 3rd timeout. It was their only chance if they didn't pick up a 4th and 11, which is not a high probability play. You know, if they missed that and they had that 3rd timeout left, they would have had a chance to get the ball back. Now, to be fair, they would have gotten the ball back with, you know, 30 seconds, 28 seconds left. And at that point, needing more likely than not a Hail Mary. So it's not like, I mean, on some level, what they should, given their offense, this is insane. I get it. Totally get it. But on some level, they should have thought about, because it was 4th and 11 and they had all 3 timeouts left. Listen to this one, Max. Given how bad their offense was and how unlikely it was that they were going to pick that up, they should have kicked a field goal.
Take the points. I see it.
23-22. Yeah. Would have been about 40-something seconds left. They could have kicked off, 3 timeouts, gotten the ball back. Now all you need is a field goal to win the game. I mean, that would have been real sort of out-of-the-box, contrarian. I mean, look, the bottom line is 4th and 11. A lot of things can happen. You have good players on your team in Goddard and A.J. Brown. I mean, I was thinking that Sirianni might even pull A.J. Brown off the field because, Jalen Hurts didn't even look at him on that final 1st and 10 at the 20. Didn't even look in his direction. He had bailed on him, and justifiably so. Why am I going to throw him the ball where he's going to alligator arm it, or he's not going to try? It's going to get picked, or it's just going to be an incomplete. So he tried to force one to Goddard. Goddard was the most reliable. You know, Devontae Smith had a shot on that 3rd down. You know, you got to kind of come down with that. I thought he jumped a bit too early, but calling that timeout, you know, there's a lot of declaring of terrible, you know, mismanaged coaching situations. Obviously, you don't want to use that timeout, but the play clock was down to a point, and they didn't seem to have a comfort with what was called. So is it better to, you know, use the timeout to get into a better play to avoid a 5-yard penalty? So it's 4th and 16 versus 4th and 11. Probably, but you just have to be prepared after that 3rd down incompletion to get the play in on time to run that 4th down, to understand that, hey, even if we miss, we're going to have a chance, not a great chance. But, you know, the more I think about it, honestly, with Philadelphia's offense the way it was, if they had kicked the field goal, it's 23-22 with 40 seconds left. They kick off 3 timeouts, 3 stops, the punt, 22 seconds, 23 seconds left. And now all you need is field goal range, maybe starting from your own 35, somewhere around there. I mean, that's a better shot probably than completing 4th and 11 for them. Yeah, look, on the flip side, wow. I mean, does Kyle Shanahan scheme people open? I mean, big difference between the San Francisco scheme offensively and Philadelphia's scheme. And here's the other thing just about the game. San Francisco's defense has been terrible. And we talked about this on Friday as it related to this game, that you were going to know, early on, if Philadelphia wasn't slicing and dicing them up and just moving the football up and down the field and scoring touchdowns or whatever, it was going to be a dogfight. And I thought they did move the ball at times. They ran the ball well. And it was actually for a half about as good as Philadelphia can actually look offensively. But that 49er defense has been terrible, really, really bad. And Philadelphia put up 19 points. I know they missed, an extra point, but just not good enough. Big changes coming in Philadelphia, certainly an offensive coordinator. That I would imagine a Mike McDaniel, if he's available to be an OC, hell, a Cliff Kingsbury would be a massive improvement. Actually, Kingsbury's scheme would fit Philly pretty well and Jalen Hurts pretty well. But that, I think for me, the biggest takeaway from that particular game, it should be how great of a coach Kyle Shanahan is, how good Robert Saleh is as a defensive coordinator. Although it's not that hard to coordinate and play call against Philadelphia's offense. It's not like they're trying to trick you. What they're going to run. I think I read something this morning. They were under center, 7 times in the second half, and they ran the ball on all 7 under center snaps, not one play action at all. Brock Purdy threw 2 interceptions. Nick Sirianni's model of winning the turnover battle, and it's equated to something like 97% wins. They won the turnover battle +2 and lost the game. They lost the game because offensively they're just not good enough. There will be, I would imagine, major changes in Philadelphia. They have to find a really good offensive coordinator for the first time in a while. They've got to change the way they do things offensively. There's just too fine of a line to rely on defense, to rely on kicking game, to rely on winning turnover battle. Last year, Barkley had a crazy season. The offensive line was healthy, but they have no answers without their offensive line being healthy and with A.J. Brown checking out of a game. The 49ers just completely outwitted Nick Sirianni and company. Vic Fangio's defense was fine, although there were some big plays in that game. Purdy made some really good plays. He's good. And Demarcus Robinson coming out of nowhere. He had like 18 catches on the season, had 6 for 111 in this game. Impressive by the 49ers, really unimpressive by the Eagles offensively, and truly one of the more gutless performances. It was so bad in watching his body language when he was in on even a running play that I really thought they were going to pull him from the game, because at times it looked like Philadelphia was playing 10 on 11 offensively. A.J. Brown wants nothing to do with the Philadelphia Eagles anymore. Nothing to do. And with the dead cap money, it's going to be difficult to get out of it. I'll tell you this, man, watching him yesterday, buyer beware. He's a talent. There's no doubt. He is a big-time talent. We have seen A.J. Brown dominate games during the course of his career. But that was not a good look for him. And I know there have been other games which were not necessarily good looks for him. All right, let's go through some of the other games, and we'll go through those more chronologically. We'll go back to Saturday and hit on the Rams' incredible final drive, the Bears' incredible comeback. Those are the 2 games we'll do next. And then I think the performance of the weekend goes without saying. Josh Allen was brilliant. It was one of the better quarterback performances in a playoff game that I can remember. He was spectacular. All of that and more. We will get to Blau for sure. Ben will join us at 12. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. And don't forget, you can watch this show on our YouTube channel, the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there.
10 from the 19. Stafford going towards the end zone. Parkinson! What a catch! And a touchdown!
38 seconds left. Colby Parkinson from Matt Stafford to give the Rams a 34-31 lead. They got after Bryce Young on the final possession with great pass rush, and they hung on for a 3-point win. They went off as a 10.5 point favorite, the largest road favorite in NFL playoff history. And they got a battle, man. That was a battle. They jumped out to a 14-0 lead. I got to say this about Carolina. Bryce Young, I think, is good. Like, the same thing that made him good at Alabama is now making him good in Carolina. He's obviously a shorter quarterback, but he's really good off schedule, and he's great throwing off schedule. You know, he's great evading the rush, working his way back towards the line of scrimmage, sometimes inside the pocket and still being able to throw. It's actually like it was with Russell Wilson. You know, in his early portion of his career, Russell Wilson, a shorter quarterback, Russell Wilson's best plays weren't from the pocket on time. They were out of the pocket, extended, off schedule, or inside the pocket off schedule when the big defensive lineman had at least created some passing lanes for him. It's the same thing with Bryce Young. Don't lose sight of how clutch and how big he was at times at Bama. They got to pick up his option, right? Have to. This is the offseason in which they got to pick up the fifth-year option. I think there would have been question about it last year, but you're not going to, it's going to be hard to do like a lot better than Bryce Young. You got a guy that can operate the offense. I think Canales has done a great job with him. Got some weapons. They got two good backs, obviously, in Dowdle and Hubbard. McMillan has turned out to be a really good receiver, big target. They got, some dudes on that team. Look, they went 8-9, and I saw somebody say over the weekend, it was on one of the pregame shows, the worst part about Carolina winning the division is they're going to exit in the first round and then end up with a first-place schedule next year, which is true. But again, some of that gets overrated. The schedule's only 3 games different from everybody else in your division. But I thought Bryce Young did a really nice job in that game. And look, Stafford got banged up. They're looking at his finger. You saw the play that happened. At that point, I think he was 8 for 9. And then he went 2 for his next 12. So he was obviously impacted by that injury. But when they took over late in that game, down 27-24, that was an incredible drive. He made every big throw. And man, is there anybody better right now in terms of catching the football, contested, big, strong hands, strong target than Puka Nacua in the postseason? I'm talking about, because Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, they're not in the postseason. Puka Nacua, 10 catches, 111 yards in the game. Stafford threw a pick in the game and got lucky on 1 or 2 other balls. It wasn't his best, and he wasn't right, but still over 300 yards and a game-winning drive in which there were 4 lead changes in the fourth quarter. Incredible football game to kick it off, and an unexpected, really good football game to kick it off. But I'm not sure there was anything as dramatic as Saturday night at Soldier Field.
Field goal range. They want to get 7. They can use the clock. Williams throwing, and it's caught for the touchdown by DJ Moore.
That was the Luke McCaffrey play from earlier in the season. The fake bubble, and then boom, right down the sideline. DJ Moore touchdown. That gave Chicago the lead, amazingly, 31-27 with 1:43 to go. Man, there was so much to this game. This had to be, for a Packer fan, just truly gut-wrenching. Your arch rival, a team that you had lost to and blown a big lead the previous time you had been at Soldier Field 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, whenever it was. You gave up 25 fourth quarter points. 25. But I'll tell you what, to me, the key to the football game, and we'll get into some of the specifics in this game, 21-3 at halftime. They missed the field goal at the end. How about McManus? I mean, what a dreadful day for Brandon McManus. 0 for 2 on field goals, and he missed a key extra point in that game as well. To me, it was they dominated the first half. They were clearly the better football team. I thought they were the better football team when they lost to Chicago at Soldier Field a few weeks back. Jordan Love is absolutely on fire. Everybody is wide open. Josh Jacobs runs hard, even though he didn't have a lot of yards necessarily. And I don't know what changed in the second half. But after a first half in which they went 9 plays, 85 yards, touchdown, 10 plays, 87 yards, touchdown, 8 plays, 32 yards, touchdown, 6 plays at the end of the half, 27 yards, missed field goal. Then they went 3 and out, 3 and out, 5 and out, 3 and out to start the second half. What happened? I mean, what in God's name happened? Did Dennis Allen just out-scheme Matt LaFleur in the second half? I mean, if you told me that Chicago is going to come back, led by really more than anything else, their defense. Okay, well, we're going to get to Caleb. He was brilliant, when he had to be. But they don't have a chance down 18 if they don't get stop to start the second half. 4 punts after none in the first half. And they were quick punts. 3 and out, 3 and out, 5 and out, 3 and out. That's why they were able to get back into the game. Any kind of big comeback, it almost always starts, basketball, football, with defense. If you don't get the stops, you can't come back. If you don't get the stops quickly when you're down by a lot, you can't come back. Like if Green Bay went instead of 3 plays minus 2 yards to open up the second half, 10 plays, 42 yards, and then punted, that's much different. If their second drive, instead of 3 plays, 8 yards and a punt, is 6 plays, 29 yards, that's another, that's another 2 minutes. It's another 120 seconds of clock. So you're talking about a lot of time, and it shortens the game with the lead. Chicago wasn't just getting the stops. They were getting them within a minute and a half, and getting the ball back. And even then, they didn't take advantage of every opportunity. They still went into the fourth quarter down 21-6. They couldn't score in the red zone touchdowns. The fourth down, conversation from over the weekend. Yeah, I mean, I personally think that, you got to look at every single one. There's context to every single one. But I don't disagree that largely teams were more reckless than aggressive on fourth downs. There are certainly plenty of examples where it not only makes sense to be aggressive, it makes a lot of sense to be aggressive, and to the point where you shouldn't even describe it as aggressive on a 4th and 1 or a 4th and 2 in a certain situation. But there was a lot of recklessness. I thought Chicago in the first half from their own 32-yard line going for a 4th and 5 was absurd. I understand you don't think you can stop them. You ended up stopping them in the second half. But in a 14-3 game with 6 minutes to go in the first half, who goes for 4th and 5 from your own 32-yard line? That's reckless. And they were down 21-3. Look, they came back. They won the game. But that simple turnaround, you got to punt. Occasionally, you got to punt. You just do. All right, let's get to Caleb Williams. Look, the talent is unmistakable. everything you saw on that 4th and 8 throw to Rome Odunze is what every college football fan saw over and over again at USC in particular. Just the incredible ability to create, to extend, to give himself more time, give receivers more time. Look, that wasn't played well necessarily by the Green Bay secondary, that 4th and 8, which was the biggest play of the game in terms of Chicago being able to win. Clearly. I mean, that is a 4th down and 8. You're down at that point 27-24, and you're going to give the ball back at midfield to Green Bay. That's game pretty much over. I'm sorry, it's 27-16. What am I talking about? 27-16, and you're going to give him the ball with 5 minutes to go at midfield if they stop it. And he makes a brilliant play. Brilliant play. By the way, that was after a false start on a 4th and 3 that pushed it back. They get that touchdown, and then here comes Green Bay down the field, and they've got a 44-yard field goal, to make it a 6-point game. I'll tell you what, the holding there was a delay of game penalty on that drive. There was also a holding penalty that was devastating to them. To Green Bay. They had multiple chances to kind of put the game borderline on ice. They didn't do it. You typically need that when you're, coming back from 18 down. And then that last drive, there was no doubt in my mind when they took over with 2:50 or whatever left in the game. I mean, at that point, Green Bay was reeling defensively, and Caleb Williams was just making one play after another. And even when they decided to run the football, whether it was Swift or the other kid, the Monangai, they were getting chunks. And then the touchdown pass, the saving grace for Green Bay is it came with a lot of time left. Came with 1:43 left. So Green Bay's final drive. There are a couple of things real quickly about the final drive. First of all, before the final drive, and I'll just pick on Herb Street and Michaels here a little bit. There was an interception that Caleb threw in the first half on a 4th down that shouldn't have been intercepted. It was a terrible interception by, I forget who it was. I think it's, who intercepted that ball? It wasn't Nixon.
No, Nixon gave up that bad play.
It was
at the goal line. He made that business decision.
Yeah.
I'm trying to pull it up right now. Who had that interception?
I don't know.
Oh,
It was a
Valentine?
deep ball that he threw. It was a deep ball that he threw for Burden on 4th and 6.
Yes, Valentine.
Thank you. You got to knock that down. You have to knock that football down. You can't pick it off. It cost them 28 yards in field position. And Michaels had no clue. Herb Street had no clue before they went to the break. I mean, maybe Herb Street did, and he didn't want to correct him. Michaels was raving about the interception. No, it's a terrible interception. You have to know that. You've got to know the significance as a play-by-play guy of the missed extra point at 27-16. It's a massive missed extra point. At 11, now it requires a touchdown, 2-point conversion, and a field goal. They have the option on a 4th down and field goal range on their next drive of kicking a field goal. It's a massive, massive missed extra point. And they didn't even mention it. They didn't mention the significance of the Packers' timeouts that were used on defense in the final 2 drives of that game, leaving with one timeout to start their final drive. Look, sometimes, I think one of them, there were 10 players on the field. You can't blame a timeout with 10 players on the field, but it's so painful to lose those timeouts for that final drive. And then I thought something that no one picked up on, either during the game or after the game. On the Packers' last drive, first of all, they called the timeout with 44 seconds to go on a throw over the middle to Reed to the Chicago 43. I didn't actually have a problem with them using that timeout there. I think it's on a longer pass play, you're just going to burn too much time. Those that would argue that that's a bad timeout, you get up and you run a play or you spike it. You get up and you run another play or even spike it. It's 34 seconds left. You've wasted 10 seconds. I think you got to save those 10 seconds. But the play that was the most interesting to me was the 10-second runoff at 32 seconds. It was the pass over the middle to Reed. I'm sorry, Reed had dropped a ball, but Reed then had a 20-yard catch to the Chicago 23. The play ends with 38 seconds left. I've gone back and looked at this several times, and the center is injured. The lineman is down on the field, injured. And they didn't stop the clock until there were 32 seconds left. Then you come back with the 10-second runoff. So a couple of things here. First of all, the 10-second runoff, if it's not from 38 seconds, it's got to be from like 37, 36, 35, not 32. You can't take 6 seconds with a player down with everybody looking back at the player and then run the 10-second runoff from 32 to 22. The Packers should have had more time there, in my opinion. I'm sure the rule is from the time the referee spots the injury and stops the clock for the injury, but they should have seen the injury earlier and stopped the clock. It costs Green Bay big time. Secondly, Green Bay goes to the line of scrimmages and seems to be unaware at the very beginning that the clock's going to roll. They snapped it with 19 seconds left instead of with 22. You got to snap that ball right away. You can't waste any more time. And then, lastly, the snap with 7 seconds to go that, was a bad snap. I think they were going to throw the ball to the sideline. The Bears had dropped back significantly. I think they were going to take 8, 10 easy yards and then go for that final play from the 18. I mean, Love did what he could do on the bad snap with what was, right, the backup center. It was the center that got hurt on that play, right? I think it was. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, I think so.
But so much to the end of that game. But it doesn't happen without a quarterback able to make plays like Caleb Williams did. Look, he's a 57, 58% passer. There's no doubt he's got accuracy issues. If I didn't have a quarterback, sign me up right now for Caleb Williams and his inaccuracies because of all of the other plays he makes that helps you win the game. Sign me up for 58% and a couple of picks a game. Seriously, because of the unbelievable plays he makes. And by the way, let's face it, the absolute cool and calm, not during the game with the ranting and raving on the sideline, but on the field when they need it, his athleticism and his ability to operate in those pressure moments, still with, some frenetic athleticism, is impressive. I mean, he threw for 361 yards and completed 50% of his passes. You don't see that a lot. He finished the regular season as a 58.1% passer. 58.1. In this day and age of NFL football and high completion percentage rates, that's terrible. 58.1. And you see it. You see the bad misses, horrible misses, sometimes horrible decisions. But there's no way with this dude, if I didn't have one, that I wouldn't sign up for a couple of picks, a big pick, a big mistake, and 58%, completion percentage for all of the good you get with Caleb Williams. What a job Ben Johnson's done with him this year. What an incredible job he's done with Caleb Williams. And I would assume that maybe, this is just year 2. The completion percentage might go up. The picks might go down. He didn't have a lot of picks during the course of the year. Some of the bad plays will start to go down. I mean, he is 24 years old. I mean, a quarterback doesn't really come into his own and start figuring things out until their late 20s. What a talent he is. What an exceptional athletic talent who can make every single throw and is absolutely lethal off schedule. And he, as a runner, the speed he has as a runner, really, really impressive. I'll tell you what, man, the Bears, they're having our season from last year to a certain degree. There's a big difference, right? The big difference is this is a team that was way up there in takeaways defensively. makes a big difference in terms of win total and winning games when your defense is actually helping out. Now, they don't have a great defense, but the defense takes the ball away. Real quickly on this game, too, I thought Jordan Love was really good. He does at times look like he is so cool and so calm that it's almost too calm and too cool. But I thought he was outstanding in this game. His receivers let him down. That drop on that final drive would have given them plenty of time deep in Chicago territory. I think Reed had the drop. I think it was Reed. How about Golden's coming out party in a playoff game? What a great run after catch for the go-ahead lead. Watson, though, had a ball in his hands, dropped it. There were a couple of them. I mean, Jordan Love was, also barely a 50% passer in the game, but I thought he was great because they didn't have much of a running game. Josh Jacobs runs really hard, but at the end of the day, what did he rush for in this game? 55 on 19. I mean, that's not even 3 yards a carry. Right? 57 would be 3 at 19. I mean, he was at 2.9 yards per carry. 2.9 yards per carry. And Jordan Love put up 323, 4 touchdowns, no picks, and only got sacked once. It looks like, by the way, Matt LaFleur is going to come back. Adam Schefter had some reporting this morning. There's a lot of discussion about Matt LaFleur. Personally, Matt LaFleur's available. He'd go right to the top of the list. I think almost in some ways maybe ahead of Harbaugh because of the age. But Schefter reported earlier this morning the Packers are now expected to try to work out a deal in the coming days to keep Matt LaFleur. He had 1 year left on his deal. But they haven't done it in the playoffs, and man, did they fall apart after losing Micah Parsons. They really did. What a football game. The 2 on Saturday, and then we got the first 2 on Sunday. We've already gone through Philly and San Francisco. We'll go through, I think, the number one performance of the weekend, and that was Josh Allen's performance. We'll get to the Sunday night game as well. All of that and more coming up. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
Reggie Gilliam, fullback, big on the tush push. There he is, shoving, and Allen's got it. Not to be denied. He's still going. Look at this.
Wow.
A full thoroughbred.
Touchdown.
And they say touchdown.
Field of a touchdown is under review.
Josh Allen's performance was the best performance of the weekend, in my opinion. That was not an easy game. I didn't think they were the better team. I think they play that game 10 times, and Jacksonville wins 7 of them, 6 of them at least. Buffalo was led by and carried literally by their quarterback, Josh Allen, who was 28 of 35 for 273 yards, a touchdown, no picks. He was only sacked against that incredible defense one time. He rushed for 33 yards, including for 2 touchdowns, one in the first half, and then the one that followed that play, because it was not a touchdown. They marked it short. We'll talk about the game strategy before that quarterback sneak for the go-ahead in a moment. Josh Allen was the best quarterback in the NFL yesterday, and I know that some of the really good quarterbacks in the NFL weren't playing this weekend and aren't playing next weekend. But Josh Allen made a case right now for being the best that there is. I just loved the performance by Allen. Every single time they got the football, it seemed to me like if they don't score, they're going to lose the game. They only had in the second half 3 possessions in the game. 3. An incredible football game, really start to finish. I love the game. I love Josh Allen's performance. Let's talk about it a little bit more. First of all, Jacksonville's really good. I'm sorry. In the second half, by the way, they punted once. So it was actually 4 possessions with 1 punt. And that was I think the one drive he actually got sacked on. I think that was it. I think Jacksonville, we don't see them a lot. We don't pay attention to them a lot. They're really good. With that said, their quarterback makes too many boneheaded throws and doesn't see it as clearly all the time as he should now, as a quarterback who just finished his 5th season and is 26 years old. There's so much to like about Trevor Lawrence, but I think the scheme allows for a lot more than perhaps he produced yesterday against a team that isn't very good defensively. I thought Jacksonville made a big mistake. This is, questioning play calling, which is always a dicey thing for fans. I understand that. But there was a point in the third quarter in which Travis Etienne and Bashal Tutin, the Virginia Tech kid, they were each averaging over 12 yards per carry and yet only had 4 carries each. Let me just say that again. The 2 running backs for Jacksonville into the third quarter were each averaging over 12 yards per carry. And it's not because one of them had a 70-yard run or a 60-yard run, or they both did. The longest runs were 20 and 26 yards. And yet they weren't running the football. They kept dropping Lawrence back. Now, you could tell that on a lot of them, they were run calls, and he was alerting. So he was going to, because there were a couple of under center that I think were run calls that he then went back to shotgun and ended up throwing it. So they give him that opportunity at the line of scrimmage to see a box that's loaded or a play that he thinks he should get out of, and he got out of it a lot. I would bet that there were more runs called that he checked out of. But still, man, tell your quarterback you're not allowed to check out of him because our running backs are averaging over 12 yards per carry. And that's really an easy way to move the football down the field and score. This game was just, from the beginning, you could tell. From the beginning, it was like, if Josh Allen doesn't strap the team to his back, which we've seen him do over and over again, including in the postseason, they're not going to have a chance. They're not better. They're getting whipped at the line of scrimmage, both sides of the football. Usually that is a determining factor in the game, and they were. I mean, they were unable to handle it, but the play calling and the decision making and Josh Allen's ability to get the ball out was huge. Buffalo could not run the football. We talked about on Friday, I said, really their best hope here is for James Cook to go off and to possess the football and for them to run the football. James Cook's a great back. 15 carries, 46 yards, 3.1 yards per carry. It had to be done by Josh Allen with Khalil Shakir and 49-year-old Brandon Cooks. I actually don't know how old he is now. How old is he? He's got to be in his mid-30s, right? Brandon Cooks. Keon Coleman up and down. The two tight ends are massive for him, Knox and Kincaid. Some dude named Shavers. They carried Gabe Davis off the field at one point. They didn't have Ty Johnson for the game, who's a great pass-catching option for them out of the backfield. This was all Josh Allen. All Josh Allen. Every drive they had the ball. It's like, pretty sure if you punt, it's over. Pretty sure if you punt, it's over. And on the last three, the second half drives, 11 plays, 45 yards, field goal. Then there was the 1 3-and-out punt for them. And then 9 plays, 65 yards, touchdown. 9 plays, 66 yards, touchdown for the game winner. Wasn't necessarily the game winner in the moment. We didn't think, because they do have a kicker over there on the other side. Jacksonville does. We'll talk about that last sequence in which should Buffalo have scored? Should Jacksonville have let them score, which they did? There was a lot of strategy there at the end. Poor Tony Romo just seemed lost in calling the game pretty much the entire game. They got to replace that number one team. Nance, I guess, has to be the number one guy. But I like Ian Eagle and J.J. Watt at CBS the best. All right. We'll get to that end of Buffalo-Jacksonville game next.
Sheehan will have the ball in his hands on every play.
Coming after him. Gets rid of it deep. He's open. And Cooks has it. Cooks was left alone in the secondary.
So that was the 36-yard against zero coverage all-out blitz to Cooks. What a throw by Josh Allen. He just unloaded it, knew that he would fall into that area. It was just an incredible play. By the way, in the first half, was it Cooks who had that catch that was overturned? I thought that was a catch. Do you know the play I'm talking about in the first half that they overturned on replay? They went to the break and Sterator said, I think it's going to be overturned, Tony. And he was right. I thought he had the hand underneath the ball, even though it hit the ground. But whatever. That throw was the most insane throw of the day. And he had a lot of them, Josh Allen did. That gave them the 1st and 10 at the Jacksonville 20 at the 2-minute warning. Trailing in the game 24-20. They had to score a touchdown to take the lead. And then we get to the 4th and goal at the 1 at the Jacksonville 11. The sneak in which Josh Allen not only sneaks it for a first down, he sneaks it for 10.5 yards down to the half-yard line. They called it a touchdown that he broke the plane on the field. They went back and overturned it and marked him down at basically the 1-yard line. So they've got to eliminate that play from the game. There's actually a rule where you are not allowed to pull a runner. And that is a rule already that exists. Pushing, a runner, as we know from the tush push, whether in the field of play or behind the line of scrimmage, is legal, but you're not allowed to pull. And you had an instance there at the very end where the lineman turned and was actually pulling Josh Allen. I think that the tush push, I think all pushing, pulling, lifting up and carrying a ball carrier, quarterback, running back, doesn't matter. It needs to be outlawed. This play is over, but it's not. You just see the mass, like it's a rugby scrum just moving in one direction. I know that it's dicey with forward progress and whistling a play when the running back is still doing it himself. But when he's clearly being aided by being pulled or pushed after the defense has stopped the play, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's what we've watched as football fans, and that it's a more recent phenomena. I mean, the offensive lineman lifted Josh Allen into the air and carried him for a few of those yards. Not that Josh Allen needs the help. Now, what should they have done? So it's 1st and goal at the Jacksonville 1-yard line. Jacksonville has just used its last timeout. There's 1:04 left in the game. So I think that down 4, you probably don't want to score on first down. You probably would like to have Josh Allen. You can't take a knee for lost yardage. And that's what makes it a bit dicey. Like, it's a delicate play. You don't want to lose any ground. You don't want the ball back at the 2-yard line, 2nd and goal from the 2. They have, by the way, they have timeouts left. They're in good shape. The clock's not going to run out on Buffalo. But you can't give the ball back to Jacksonville with a minute left in the game, as they did, or I guess there was 1:04 left when he scored. With the kicker, they have Cam Little, who's got a 68 and a 67-yard field goal to his credit this year. I mean, that means you only have to make it out to the 50-yard line before you're in range. By the way, just as a side note, I really hate the 35-yard line on the touchbacks. Just hate it. Offenses just don't have to work that hard for point opportunities, especially in this day and age with the field goal kickers that they have. But here's the problem with, not scoring on first down. Jacksonville, by the way, let him score. Tony Romo was completely confused in that spot. He did not have any clue before. I thought it was a distinct possibility that Jacksonville was going to let him score, because you're only down 3 if they make the extra point, and you've got Cam Little. So, the odds are 1st and goal at the 1 that Buffalo is going to score a touchdown to take the lead. If you're Jacksonville, you want them to do it sooner rather than later. There was no contemplating what Jacksonville did before the snap. He picked it up after the snap, but not before the snap. Here's the problem, though, with, not scoring on that 1st and goal, which then allows you to burn 40 seconds. That clock can go all the way down now to 20 seconds when that play ends, 25 seconds. You can call a timeout. You've got 2nd and goal, 3rd and goal, 4th and goal, and you got to feel pretty confident that with Josh Allen, you can score on a quarterback sneak. But the problem is that 1st down play, you don't want to lose any yardage. So he's got to take the snap, and he's kind of got to go forward, getting down in that traffic, in that massive humanity, and not lose any ground. Okay, that's number one. Not easy necessarily. You don't want to lose a yard. You don't want 2nd and goal to 2. Okay, yes, I guess theoretically I can go quarterback sneak if I need to with Josh Allen, and there's probably a pretty good chance you're going to score, but it's not definite. Harder when you double the yardage, even though it's just doubling from a yard to 2. The other issue is this. I mean, how many times do we see an offensive penalty in those situations? So what if you do what I've suggested, and I do think it creates the best odds for winning, which is not scoring on 1st down. But what if on 2nd and goal from the 1.5, let's just say he lost a half yard, there's a false start. Now you're 2nd and goal from the 6.5. Now it's a whole new ball game. Not to mention that Josh Allen, in a situation actually coming out of his own end zone, in a game in which he only needed to move the ball forward and fall down, and it was game over against Minnesota a few years ago, fumbled the snap in a situation like that. Minnesota scored a touchdown defensively. So there's a lot that can go wrong. And I think, the situation is this. Like, of course, if you're down 2, you do not score a touchdown right away. Because you're really just going for the walk-off field goal, or you're going for the walk-off quarterback sneak with 10 seconds to go, 15 seconds to go. You've got timeouts. You can control the situation. But down by 4, 100% needing a touchdown with field goal not being an option, you do have to be careful, And yes, going up 3 gives you some comfort that you're not going to lose in regulation. I still think overall, odds-wise, their best chance to win the game was to not score on 1st down and burn 40 seconds of the Jacksonville opportunity. But it wasn't like the easiest thing to pull off. And you just one fumbled snap, one injured quarterback, one, penalty, and now you're like, man, I wish I'd scored on 1st and goal. Bottom line is, didn't matter because Trevor Lawrence's pass to Jacoby Myers, which I think was catchable. It was a contested throw by Tre'Davious White, who had a hell of a football game for Buffalo. But that thing was picked off, and that was the ball game. 27-24, best performance of the weekend without question in my mind's eye. Josh Allen wasn't close. And how about this? I have to think that this is the first time this has happened. Maybe not. I'd have to look this up. I'm sure somebody's posted it at this point. Buffalo is going to go to the 1 seed, Denver, on Saturday. We'll get to the schedule in a moment. And they're favored. The Bills are favored at Denver. Just so you know, they went off as an underdog in yesterday's game. A lot of really super sharp money came in at the very end, and they went off as a 1.5 point dog, 2-point dog against Jacksonville after being favored all week long. I actually think the Denver matchup for Buffalo is a better matchup. I think this, Ross Tucker said to us on Friday or Thursday, right, Max? The winner of the Buffalo-Jacksonville game is going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Those were 2 really good teams. That was a very high-level, intense, hard-hitting, enjoyable game to watch. Mostly enjoyable because Josh Allen is just spectacular. All right, we'll hit on the final game when we come back, and we'll open it up for calls. We'll get to David Blau. We got a whole hour on David Blau, starting with Ben at 12, and I'll give you my thoughts. I mean, we kind of knew that was a good possibility last week, Blau was, but we'll talk about what they got in Blau, what it'll look like with Blau, and what's next in terms of the defensive coordinator hire. But your chance to weigh in on this incredible playoff weekend, 301 230 0980. Anything you want to talk about in relation to any of the 5 games that have been played so far. But I will start with just this one question that I want you to answer. Was there a better performance than Josh Allen's over the weekend? We still have one more to go tonight. Steelers and Texans. I picked the Texans to go to the Super Bowl 2 months ago. I have the Steelers as a smell test pick tonight, +3. And a big hedge bet, Max, on the Steelers now, just in the event that they win. A money line hedge bet. We'll see. Should be a really interesting game tonight to finish up Wildcard weekend. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
28-yard total tonight. Play pass. Oh, picked up on Henley. Twists him. Man's up. Henry's got it to the end zone. Touchdown, New England, against his own team in the playoffs.
Made a Henry the only touchdown in the game. It was 9-3 entering the fourth quarter. No dramatic fourth quarter in this one. And if you were watching the first three quarters, it was somewhat predictable. I mean, the Green Bay-Chicago game wasn't very predictable, that's for sure. You know, a 25-point fourth quarter we did not see coming at the end of the third quarter with the Packers leading 21-6. But the Packers had really stalled a bit offensively, and the Bears were just bad in the red zone and in a couple of other areas. This one was kind of a no-chancer, really, all along for the Chargers. They just could not protect Justin Herbert, who took an absolute beating in the football game. A beating. The Patriots won the game last night, if you didn't know, 16-3. Really led in this particular game, led by their defense. Dominant defensive performance. In fact, I pulled this from, I think it was Next Gen. The Patriots allowed 0 touchdowns in the game last night. They had a half dozen sacks, 6 sacks of Justin Herbert, by the way, for 39 yards. So that's averaging 6.5 yards per sack. With his mobility, that's a big lost yardage number. They allowed under 100 yards rushing, all right, in the game. Justin Herbert was their leading rusher with 57 yards, but they had 87 yards total rushing. And they allowed allowed under 150 net passing yards. Listen to this. The only other team in the Super Bowl era to do all of that in a playoff game defensively, the 1985 Chicago Bears against the Giants. Last night's Patriots defense against the Chargers was one of the most dominating defensive performances in the postseason we have seen in literally 40 years. It looked it. I mean, poor Herbert had no chance. I got to put this a little bit on Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh. Where's the screen game? Where's the quick game? Where is some of that stuff where the ball's coming out immediately to nullify the pass rush? All of the drop back, hoping that Justin Herbert could create magic. And he ran for 57 yards in the game on 10 carries, all scrambles. Actually, there was a couple of options and designed runs. But where was the idea that we can't protect him in the drop back game? They haven't been able to protect him all year long. They lost their 2 best tackles. I'm sure you remember that from our game against them. You know, they lost Slater early. They lost Alt early. They've had just a disastrous offensive line situation all year long. Justin Herbert was sacked during the regular season 54 times, 13 more times than his most in a season. So you start there with the game last night. Just an unbelievable defensive performance by New England. One of the best we've seen in 4 decades. That's where it starts. And I think the second part of that is you got to put some of it on the Chargers. To put it all on Herbert is a mistake. They didn't have easy answers anywhere. Again, you got to go quick game. They tried to run it a little bit with the kid Vidal, and Hampton was not, he was up, but he didn't really play. That was a big loss for sure, but unbelievable job by New England defensively, and some questions for the Chargers offensively. Look, this is a game in which the Charger defense was outstanding. Outstanding. I mean, this New England offense has been humming. It's been great. And I said on Friday, this is the first legitimate defensive team they have faced in a while. I think Tampa, when they played them, was still pretty good defensively, although they were starting to falter in that moment. And the Chargers really, I mean, they stopped them on third down throughout the game. They had 2 turnovers, forced 2 turnovers. One was a sack fumble by May. Another one was a tipped ball interception at the 10-yard line, and the Chargers got nothing from it. Back to the sometimes just take the field goal. Yeah, I understand where the team's going to end up if you miss. Points, playoffs, game context. You got all that should be into play there. They also almost had another. This was a bad fumble by Drake May at the end of that game. Up 16-3. That ball almost bounced into the hands of a Charger who would have taken it for a touchdown and a 16-10 game with about 5 minutes to go. I don't know why they had him dropping back at that point against that defense. Now, New England ran the football. I thought Ramondre Stevenson was outstanding. I thought Drake May as a runner was incredible. God, you can't play man coverage against him. It's like with Jaden Daniels. You have to be really careful against some of these guys playing man coverage where you got your back turned. That cost the Chargers at the end of the first half 3 points, which, by the way, I would also put on their offense at the end of the first half. They had a chance with not great field position to run the football a couple of times and perhaps not really give New England enough time to score before the end of the half. And then I'll say this about Drake May, under siege all night long. Not a lot there. The runs he made were outstanding, and a couple of the throws that he made were big time. It was not his best day statistically by a long shot. They faced an excellent defense. He was 17 of 29 for 268, a touchdown, a pick. And he had 2 fumbles in the game, one of which was recovered. And the other one could have been a game changer there at the end. But I still think he looked, given that this was easily the best defense they have faced since Cleveland earlier in the year, I still think he made a lot of big-time plays. A lot of big-time plays. Now, if the Charger offense had been capable last night, it would have been a difficult thing for the Patriots to overcome some of the mistakes. But the Chargers had no chance offensively against New England's defense. No chance. So we are now set for divisional round weekend minus 1 team still to be determined. And the games are going to go like this. No times to the games yet or even networks assigned yet. But the Bills and Broncos are going to play on Saturday, and the 49ers and Seahawks are going to play on Saturday. Let me just tell you that is unfair to the 49ers. I know that we've had a run here of the 2 teams with byes playing on Saturday, but the Rams and Bears both played on Saturday, and the 49ers played on Sunday, and they're facing a team coming off a bye. I think the Rams and Bears should have been the Saturday game, and the 49ers should have been given a full week going into the Seahawks game. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me on that one, but I would guess, my guess right now is that if the Steelers win tonight, that'll be the primetime game next Sunday night because it'll be Aaron Rodgers in Foxborough against the Patriots. If it's Houston, I think the Rams-Bears will be the night game next Sunday night. And if the Steelers win, more likely than not, you'll get Bills-Broncos first, 49ers-Seahawks second. If the Texans win, more likely than not, you'll get the Bills-Broncos at night, the 49ers-Seahawks first. Both of those days, don't worry about West Coast, East Coast. The start times of the games on Saturday, 4:30 and 8. And then Sunday, it's 3 and 6:30, which is the same that you get for Championship Sunday the next week. We've had that for a while now on divisional round weekend where you get that second game in prime time. Right now, just, look aheads. The Rams are favored in Chicago by 3.5. The Bills are favored as a road team in Denver, laying 1.5. And Seattle is a 7-point favorite against the Niners. They just destroyed them, remember, last week in the game for the 1 seed. That will be a different challenge for sure for the 49ers. The Eagles' offense, predictable, very predictable, no scheming up. But the Seahawk offense will be different. But keep in mind that Shanahan against McDonald, great matchup. And Sam Darnold has done things to himself and his team in those big spots. And then you'll get the Patriots hosting a game against either the Texans or the Steelers. If the Texans win tonight and look impressive, don't be surprised if Houston's either a very short favorite, the game's a pick'em game, or perhaps they're a very, very short dog. I think the Patriots would be a sizable, a 5-point or larger favorite against the Steelers. I've not looked at headlines. That's just the guess. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Your chance to weigh in on the postseason. But, Max, what were your big takeaways from the weekend?
My big takeaways, I mean, I hate to give the Bears credit, but my God, the comeback was really impressive. And the Panthers put on a show. Like, Bryce Young was a gamer. But I really just – parity is kind of the big word of the weekend for me. A lot of even teams, everybody had their issues, but which teams are good enough or well coached enough to overcome those issues? And we got our results this weekend. I'm not gonna lie, like the Texans tonight, we haven't gotten a big blowout yet, so that's kind of what I'm expecting. But
we had last night felt like a blowout.
Yeah, felt like it, but
it felt like it. Like as I had the Chargers, so I was hoping that maybe they'd hit on a big play here or there, but they were not the better team pretty much from the jump. I mean, they were really good defensively, but because they couldn't do anything on offense, it was eventually going to go the wrong way. Tonight is such a tough matchup for Pittsburgh, even with DK Metcalf back. But, they could wreak havoc on Stroud and the Houston offense with TJ Watt back and looking pretty good in that season finale against Baltimore. Should be it's a good Monday night game. They went to this Monday night when they went to the 7-7, 14 total playoff teams. And because the two teams playing tonight, the winner of the Monday night game is always going to play the following Sunday against whatever team they're going to face. And because you're not going to have somebody play Monday night and then Saturday. I actually think that really for competitive purposes, they'd be better off going 3-3, 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, but they're never going to do that with the Monday night opportunity for a primetime playoff game on Monday Night Football, but should be an interesting game. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Phone lines open. Anything you want to talk about from the playoff weekend, we'll save the David Blau conversation for the 12 o'clock hour. Let's go to Joe in Springfield. Joe, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, what's going on?
What's up, Joe?
So to me, first off, 4 of the 5 games this weekend were entertaining. The game last night was entertaining in the fourth quarter until New England put it away. But I would say the key of all the games, at least the first 4 games of the weekend, were kicking. Like missed field goals, missed extra points. Because look at Philadelphia yesterday. Jake Elliott misses an extra point. Instead of Philadelphia trying to win at the end, they could have tied it to go to overtime.
Yeah, the 49ers missed the extra point too. So you ended up with the score you should have ended up with had both guys made their extra points. But you're right, had Jake Elliott made his and the 49ers kicker missed his at the end, you would have had a field goal to tie and force overtime down 23-20.
Yeah, and then Saturday night against Chicago, Brandon McManus misses 2 field goals and an extra point. If you make those, the Bears are tying the game and going to overtime as well. So kicking was a key all weekend.
Huge
and I agree with you.
Massive.
Yeah, and I agree with you that this weekend coming up, if Houston has to win tonight first, but it wouldn't surprise me, Kevin, this weekend if all the road teams go on the road and win their games, because the playoffs have been so fun, entertaining so far, and it wouldn't surprise me if the road teams win. That's how
I'd be surprised if San Francisco won. I would, but I shouldn't be, because they're so well coached and they figure it out so well. And Sam Darnold, there is a lack of trust there for me, but what I saw 2 weeks ago with what Seattle did to San Francisco, that was a one-sided knockout. I mean, they would have stopped that
Kevin,
that if it had been a fight early. So, and now they're playing
Kevin,
at home.
There was a difference. There was a difference about this. Yes, George Kittle was not going to be played because he's injured, but he got Trent Williams back. That's the key for the 49ers.
Yeah, it was
line.
big.
So we'll see what happens.
It was big. Yeah, the other thing, and I've got it in my notes, and I didn't mention it, but Philadelphia, when they missed that extra point, they could have gone for the 2 in the second quarter when they scored the touchdown to go ahead 13-7. But I think you shouldn't go for 2 until the fourth quarter, unless there are extenuating circumstances, like you're playing in a super low-scoring game, bad weather, whatever it is. Those things always catch up with you, typically, if you chase a missed extra point early, as an example. But if they had gone for 2 there and gone up 14-7, it would have been different as well. But they missed the extra point too. And, you can make the case too, real quickly, for the 49ers last touchdown, because it came so late. You can make the case that they should have gone for 2. Why? Well, being up 4 in that spot versus 6, 5, or 6 in that spot. 6 is huge because then Elliott's got to make the extra point. He's already missed 1 if they score on the other end. Typically, you don't want to, go from 4 to 6 too early, because if you miss it, then you're down 3 instead of forcing them to go for 2 when they score on their next drive. But you could make the case that when the 49ers took the lead with 2.5 to go, something like that, that they should have gone for 2 there instead of kicking the extra point. That 23-19, 24-19 with really only 1 possession more likely than not left in the game is the same thing. But 25-19 forces Elliott to make that extra point. He's already missed 1 if they score on the other end. Chris in Bowie. Chris, go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, Sheehan? Good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
I know there's not a lot of time I have, but there's 3 very quick things I want to say.
No, go ahead.
Number 1 is, you were not wrong when you said that there was going to be great competition for the NFL and the NCAA for playoffs this year, because these games on both sides have been excellent. That's number 1. Number 2 is, this Houston Texans defense is outrageous. I think they're going to get rid of Rodgers tonight, and they're going to the Super Bowl. I know you said that, but I think that people might think that it's crazy to think like that because they're not the Bears or Seattle or Denver, but this Texas defense is insane.
It's the best defense left in the postseason. In my opinion,
Absolutely.
It's the best one. But tonight's tricky. It's a bit tricky that they'll face the highest intellect quarterback that's left, and it's going to be very interesting to see if they can do anything. Pittsburgh can do anything offensively. Because, look, Riley Leonard, I know that they weren't playing their starters throughout the game, but the Colts scored 30 in the season finale against Houston, and Will Anderson played. Danielle Hunter played. Petrie played. They had their starters out there for a while, so maybe they've taken a bit of a step back here at the end of the season. We'll see, but go ahead. What else?
Right. And then the last thing I'll say is, this has nothing to do with the playoffs, but I can't remember who he plays for in college, but I think his last name starts with a C. He's a kicker. And I keep saying that it's been crazy, but I keep saying that since we don't have a lot of picks left, the Skins don't have a lot of picks in this draft coming up.
Are you talking about the Ole Miss kicker?
Yeah, the Ole Miss guy. Yep.
Yeah.
We need – that guy's got a Aubrey leg. He's got a little leg. The guy that plays for the Jaguars.
He might get drafted. You're right. He might get drafted.
We need that guy for sure.
Well, we don't have a lot of picks. We need a lot of things.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Period. Your first point about just the unpredictability of both the college playoff and the NFL playoff. Yeah, with one exception. That exception, I'll tell you what it is when we come back. We do have a phone line or 2 open if you want to jump on with any thoughts about this incredible wild card weekend of playoff games. 301-230-0980. Do you agree with me that Josh Allen was the best player and the best performer so far with 1 game left over the weekend. And anything else that you'd like to weigh in on, 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app.
All right, happy Monday, everybody. We are coming off one hell of a weekend in the NFL postseason, but we've got coaching interviews this morning. Cliff Kingsbury interviewing with the Ravens head coaching job. Meanwhile, Mike McDaniel is interviewing for the open spot in Cleveland. Last night, local updates. The Caps, they fall 3-2 to the Nashville Predators. Justin Sordiff exited the game early with an upper body injury. Alex Ovechkin scored his 917th career NHL tally. Meanwhile, the Wizards, they fall to the Phoenix Suns. 112-93. Alex Sarr continues to rack up the stats with 19 points, 15 rebounds. His ninth double-double this season. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch programs like Take Command throughout all of this offseason. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
said, the unpredictability of the college and the pro playoffs was great, and it has been, and it'll continue for sure in the NFL playoffs, maybe even tonight. But I'll tell you what wasn't predictable. What was very predictable, of course, I was on the wrong side of this one, was Indiana. Because if we take Friday night as part of the weekend and we look for the most impressive performance of the weekend, individually, it was Josh Allen for me. Team-wise, it was Indiana. Oh, my God, is that team good? What a final. I think we have a week from tonight with Miami against Indiana, but that team is, there's no flaw anywhere. They beat you up physically. They beat you up with scheme. They beat you up with talent. I know it's not 5-star talent, but it's talent. Their quarterback was insanely good. Like, there's no doubt he's the number one pick in the draft. Fernando Mendoza is going number one to the Raiders, unfortunately for him. Real quickly, too, before we get back to some calls. Terry McCauley, you guys sent me this about the – where is it? I had it. Here it is. About the Josh Allen 4th and 1 sneak that got almost into the end zone. He tweeted out, I very much hope the NFL Competition Committee addresses this in the offseason. This just cannot be a legal play anymore. Now, only pulling a runner is illegal. All pushing, pulling, or lifting a runner by a teammate should be illegal. I agree with that. I really do. The pushing, look, beyond the line of scrimmage, but I want the runner to earn the yards, and if he's not earning the yards anymore, then maybe you got to, blow the whistle for forward progress. But you can't lift a runner. Josh Allen was lifted by his offensive guard and carried for 2 or 3 yards before his feet got back onto the ground and started, running. He doesn't even need to be lifted. So I agree with that from Terry McCauley. Let's go to Jeff in Vienna. Jeff, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Happy Monday, Kevin. I'm going to be really brief with you here.
Sure.
Agree on Josh Allen. And do we think the NFL will ever admit that infrared electronic measuring of first downs makes no difference when humans are spotting the ball?
Yeah, well, you can challenge a virtual, measurement in terms of where there's nothing that they're not using virtual measurement to spot the ball. They're not using anything technologically to spot the ball. They're just using it to measure. So you can challenge the spot. I mentioned this when Quinn, remember, challenged a replay assist. I've seen a couple of times this year a replay assist get challenged and overturned. So even that's not perfection. But yeah, the virtual measurement is measurement. It's not for the spot. So you can always challenge the spot. Here's one thing I've noticed, Jeff, all season long. I think I've mentioned it already once or twice. It seems like that they err on the side of spotting the ball short of where it looks like it got. Like, so many times I'm like, that's not where the ball is. He got another 1.5 yards. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And sometimes replay assist helps and sometimes it doesn't. But I think they always err on the side of a shorter spot than a longer spot. Do you agree or not?
Yeah, and regular running back wide receiver plays seems to be pretty good overall for the league, but it's the quarterback slide, like the thing with Jacksonville shin down.
Yeah.
Did you see his shadow on the ground, whatever? Yeah. I think the slide is what does it more often than not, but I'm just wondering if Goodell thought he solved a huge problem, but forgot that there are still humans spotting the ball. That's all.
Yeah, but again, just to be clear, the virtual, use is for measurement. It's not for the spot. So if you think the spot is wrong, they can challenge the spot, and then depending on where the spot is, there's that virtual measurement result goes away if the challenge is upheld. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Let's go to Jane in Kensington. Jane, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Thank you. My comment had to do with Sirianni, the Eagles coach, and how he blew up on wide receiver A.J. Brown. I thought that was a big distraction for the team. And they talked about it. Brady was okay with it, but the panel, like Gronk and Long and Strahan, Strahan didn't like it, and Gronk shaking his head, as was Howie Long. I just felt that it was a distraction. Then it distracted the coach, I feel. Just change. And then you have Barkley dropping the ball. He never drops the ball, So I felt like that was a real, bonus for the 49ers that happened.
Yeah, I mentioned that Strahan. I disagree with you. I mean, I'm not. I think it's a reasonable point, and maybe it was a distraction. I thought the bigger distraction was A.J. Brown's play. I thought A.J. Brown looked like a player who had checked out before the game even started. He alligator-armed a few throws. He didn't sell out for a couple of those deep balls, and that's what Sirianni was upset about. It really, like I said this from the very beginning of the show, if you didn't know any better, you would have thought A.J. Brown was literally tanking the game. He was a non-participant in the game, and I think that's what riled up Sirianni. It's like, this is the playoffs. My quarterback's putting a ball out there that you got to lay out for. You can't, he barely even attempted to catch 3 balls that were catchable in the game. So I hear you, and maybe it was a distraction. It could have been. I don't know what the player reaction was. But as a fan of the game, I thought it was the most gutless performance of the weekend by far. I thought A.J. Brown looked like a complete and utter sellout the entire game. And look, they've had issues with him all year long, as we know, and he does not want to play for this team. It's very obvious. They should have actually pulled him from the game. I think they would have been better off with him not in the game. Let's go to Rennell. Rennell, go ahead.
Hey there. First, as Commanders fan, I was delighted to see the Eagles lose the game. And my primary reason was I think New England's defense was as important as the quarterbacks to winning the game. All those sacks, stopping the run and hurrying the passes, I thought they did a fantastic job.
Oh, the New England defense was awesome. I pointed this out. They had a performance last night that had not been equaled since the 85 Bears beat the Giants in the postseason. 0 touchdowns, half dozen sacks, under 100 yards rushing, under 150 net passing yards. No defense has done that to an opposing offense in a playoff game in 41 years. I mean, the 85 Bears, the greatest defense in the history of the NFL, at least in my lifetime of watching, was the last one to do it. They dominated the game, dominated. I still thought the quarterback was pretty good, though. Other than being a little bit loose with the football, I still think he was pretty good.
I thought the quarterback was pretty good, too. I just thought the defense is the one that primarily won the game.
The defense led. Yeah, I mean, it gave up 3 points. I mean, they won 16-3. Thanks, Rennell. Appreciate it. Mark in Largo, go ahead.
I actually think that AJ should have been benched and everything.
Yeah, I do too.
More importantly, man, I think if this is one of the things that I think is kind of scary. Look, I think David Blau has had great instructors that could run, that he can learn from. You just can't pull someone off the street and run an NFL type of offense. And Philadelphia clearly needs an experienced offensive coordinator. Clearly they do, because it's just too much talent not for them to be just scoring the points they were scoring. This time last year, they were scoring between 28 to 35. They was up there with the Commanders as far as scoring
They
points.
had 55 in the NFC Championship game. I forget who they played, but they had 55 in the NFC Championship game.
That was kind of a disastrous game. We're going to give that a pass because Washington, that was their first time there in over 30 years. So I'll give the Commanders a pass for that one. But in general, I do think that you have to have people that are innovators when they're offensive coordinators, not just someone that you just say, okay, just go on and do it. David Blau is going to show everyone is going to be the next Sean McVay. This cat is going to do everything differently. He's going to have everything running well. We're going to get better talent around for this team, and I think this team will be on our way. I think the $85,000 question, Kevin, is who the hell are we getting as a D coordinator?
I don't know. We're going to find out. We're going to see what Ben knows next.
All right, big bro. Later.
And here's another thing. I'm going to tell you guys something about David Blau that I bet you didn't know. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Ben Standig is with us. We're going to talk about David Blau. Ben Standig can be followed on X on Twitter at Ben Standig. You should read his Substack column called Last Man Standig, and you should listen to his podcast called same name, Last Man Standig. Let me tell all of you what I teased, which is I'm going to tell you something about David Blau that maybe you didn't know, and then we'll get into it with Ben on this hire. So David Blau was a quarterback at Purdue, and he was a very good quarterback in his final season in 2018. In fact, in a game early that season against Missouri, he set the Big Ten record for total yards in a game. He threw for 572 in a 40-37 loss to Missouri, but he had a total of 590 yards, which was at that point the Big Ten all-time total yardage record for a game. But in that season of 2018, they beat undefeated number 2 Ohio State in West Lafayette, 49-20. In that game, Blau threw for 378 in the win over the second-ranked Buckeyes. The Boilers at that point were 3-3. But I pulled up the game story, Ben, and first of all, in that game, Dwayne Haskins set an Ohio State record that still stands today with 73 pass attempts in the game. He was 49 of 73 for 470 yards in the loss. Blau, by the way, 25 of 43, 378, 3 touchdowns, no picks. But in the game recap, there are quotes from Blau, but then there's this quote. Quote, "My main message is we have to treat this like it's life or death. You have to have that type of mentality going into battle when someone's trying to knock you off. If you don't come ready, this happens." Closed quote, said by the leading receiver in the game for Ohio State that day, or one of them, Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin knows David Blau really well. They lost their undefeated season in 2018, courtesy of Blau's brilliant performance. Blau was actually, after that senior year, up for multiple awards following the end of that season. He was a very good college quarterback at Purdue in his final year, and he's now the offensive coordinator in Washington. So Ben joins us right now. So let's just talk about how we got here. There were 4 guys interviewed, 3 internal, 2 external. Is it your sense that none of those people had a chance, that it was Blau all along, or was there a McDaniel wild card that they still entertained up until late last week?
By the way, before I get to that, it's just hilarious. You mentioned McLaurin. We spent all summer talking about whether 30 is old for a receiver, and now we're talking about whether 30 is too young for an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Blau, I just looked up, like 2 months older than Terry.
Yeah, I remember that game because it was a disastrous game for Ohio State. They could not get Purdue off the field. I mean, Purdue ended up with, I think, 500 and something yards of offense overall, and that was that Ohio State defense. Chase Young was on that defense. You know, that was a team that offensively, KJ Hill, Terry McLaurin, Paris Campbell, J.K. Dobbins was on that team. But Blau had a great senior year. They went to a bowl game and lost, but they were good offensively. He had Rondell Moore on that team, you know, who was really quite a playmaker out of the backfield. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, to your point of did any of those other people have a real shot? I mean, I don't think so, would be my guess. I don't know this for fact. You know, the 2 candidates from outside of here, one guy from Dallas that Quinn obviously would know, and then Drew Torello was here. Like, I don't know that we're not seeing those guys mentioned on anybody else's supposed offensive coordinator list, so that seems probably unlikely. You know, Brian Johnson, I think if we had gone back to the beginning of the season and just said, hey, Cliff is going to leave to take another job or something, who's next in line if they're going to hire internally? And I really, the logical answer would have been Brian Johnson, because he's been a coordinator. He was brought in to be a passing game coordinator and assistant head coach with Quinn. He's experienced. David Blau, not experienced. So that would have been the one thought. So maybe that was the other possibility. But, if you're going to go with Blau, you probably had to figure that you probably had a sense about this, for some time. And obviously they're going for the upside, and maybe that's the way to go. We've seen other, young coaches come through over time, and, we've had these discussions, and, you're taking a big flyer. He's never, he's never done the thing that he's going to have to do. He's never even been the position coach before as the lead guy. I mean, I guess he technically sort of was the last few weeks here, but not really. So, that's a huge leap. But, if you're going to get ahead and say, hey, this guy's got so much upside, we think this is worth the risk, then, then that's kind of how they're here. And I think if you're going to even contemplate that to the degree that they clearly were, you kind of have to be bought in that one pretty quick, unless he just absolutely blows an interview, which would seem unlikely since they already know them.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like you said, Brian Johnson would have been the obvious one. And I'm not disagreeing with you that we would have certainly mentioned his name as we did last year. Like if Cliff and the offense does really well, Brian Johnson is on the staff. He's a former offensive coordinator. But right from the jump, we were hearing about Blau. We were hearing great things about Tavita Pritchard. He's now the head coach at Stanford. But right from the jump, I mean, someone very close to me in my life who knows Blau well said right from the jump when they hired him, he's one of the smartest dudes. Everybody in the sport thinks he's the next big thing. So this was clearly the way they viewed him. Over the last 2 years, unless something changed in their mind, they continued to view him that way. What I'm getting at is, when do you think that Dan Quinn, and maybe with Adam Peters consulting in their very collaborative relationship, said, yeah, Cliff's fine, but Blau, we can't let leave the building. And I prefer the way Blau would call the offense anyway, because it's a mixture of, Cliff and Ben Johnson and Kevin O'Connell, the whole thing, all of his, touch points along the way. When do you think, do you have a sense of Quinn saying, or maybe it's been in the back of his mind the entire time and he wasn't ready to start there in 2024. That's why he went out to get Cliff. But is it possible that Blau was always going to be the answer?
Well, when trying to pinpoint for me, like, when did the siren start going off that maybe this Cliff thing was going to go the way that it went? The Minnesota game we've talked about before. I mean, obviously 31-0 isn't just about the offense, but 0 points is notable. And we remember how all that game went, and, did he abandon the run and so on and so on. That was also, I believe, the week that Tavita Pritchard left, I think, to go to Stanford, meaning that Blau would be the unofficial QB coach. So to whatever degree he was able to show something in that space does sort of jive with my sense of when, Quinn may have been like, I don't know if this is where we want to go here long term. So maybe there, it's hard to say. I mean, look, they made a point of saying we want to have a lot of options here with the quarterback room, both to help the quarterback, but also in case something like this happens. And I think the general assumption was probably, if Tavita Pritchard leaves and Cliff stays, that they just, bump up Blau to QB coach, and then he gets a little more look. And, then it's a little bit easier the next year to possibly, if Cliff leaves, to say, you're the guy. So maybe they're just, skipping the year, right? Like, they can't obviously, if they go, let's just say they go out and hire Mike McDaniel, then Blau's going to leave, right? I mean, that's just probably how that's going to go. So now you're missing out on Blau, a guy who hypothetically, in the model I just laid out, would have been your guy next year anyway. So they just jumping ahead a year and saying, all right, let's do this.
Do you think he talked to McDaniel just to find out, and ultimately he was like, there's pretty good chance he's going to end up being a head coach anyway? Like, do you think that there was any sort of reach out to say, what's your situation?
I mean, I'm sure at least in a casual, some kind of way. I think when we talked about this the other day, and right before the Blau hire came down, and we started to talk about it, and I think I said that, like, I think one of my concerns with McDaniel coming here, or the idea that he would, It's just simply that a lot of other opportunities as an OC would be better jobs, frankly, right now, especially for some guy like him. Obviously, Jaden Daniels is a fun piece, but as we know, the rest of the offensive line's good, but the rest of it needs to be dealt with, and the defense as well. So, I don't think you want to be associated with a group that's maybe you're not overly confident. Again, not saying Washington is a bad job, but for somebody like McDaniel, again, the Lions have more weapons collectively, the Ravens, more collectively. So maybe there would be so maybe this wasn't a good fit. Also, I guess let's be realistic. We've all said that Dan Quinn probably just put himself on the clock with hiring by fire or moving on from Cliffs, whatever happened there. Do you want to attach yourself to a potential one and done coach? I don't know for McDaniel that makes sense. In the case of, say, a guy like Blau, it doesn't really matter, right? Because this is an opportunity for him to do his thing, and if he's being viewed as a hot guy, that's not going to change unless it's the total flame out. But that's not going to change. So, and who knows if maybe he stays no matter what happens. But that's obviously way down the line. So I imagine it was a courtesy call these with McDaniel. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I don't know if it's really going to fit here.
Before we get to what it'll look like with Blau, what it means for Jaden Daniels, et cetera, I think it's important because I think, not everybody, even those that are in the day-to-day following everything about this team, I think that they're, outside of our bubble here, there are a lot of fans that are like, who? And I think, I think from my standpoint, if somebody said, who's that? I would say, this is a guy who is not just, a random wild card. I mean, there were teams last year that wanted to talk to him about their, openings as offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, and the team blocked all of those. It was the Jets, I think the Bears, with Ben Johnson obviously getting that job. I think there's another team involved there as well. And then this year, the Lions wanted him to interview for their offensive coordinator spot. This is a guy that, you hear about him, the guy in Jacksonville, the same thing. You hear about these guys every once in a while, especially after the last decade of just seeing one, position coach in the Shanahan, family go from position coach to head coach and have great success. This is not the Shanahan family hire, even though he did have, a minute with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. But I just wanted to emphasize, this is not like a guy that no one's ever heard of. This isn't a guy that's deep down the staff. This is a guy that everybody's really believed in. And while it is bold on some level because he's never been a coordinator, we've seen a lot of offensive coordinators be first-time coordinators and it be described as bold, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. But usually offensive coordinator hires do come from guys that haven't been coordinators before. The recycling of offensive coordinators isn't, I don't think, as vast as the recycling of head coaches. But I just wanted to make that point. So if you want to add to it, you can.
Well, I think the thing that makes this interesting, beyond the fact that he's never even been a position coach, he's only been coaching for 2 years, et cetera, is that the head coach is not an offensive guy. So you have to imagine that even if Blau is going to be calling plays, I assume that's what's going to happen because there's nobody else right now you could even say, they got to have to bring in.
Assume? Of course he's going to call plays.
I mean, they haven't said anything. I'm just going with, I don't know what's going on, but I'm. Hey, man, you got to play, until they tell me.
Well,
anything,
they haven't told us officially that Kingsbury's been let go, have they?
Well, yes. I mean, they've confirmed it. They haven't put out a statement.
Yeah.
Again, yes, he's calling this. I'm just saying, the whole thing is bizarre because of the fact that you would have this person who's never, it's one thing when we kept saying, hey, Eric Bieniemy has never called plays in Kansas City. What are we doing here? Okay, well, at least Eric Bieniemy had called plays at Colorado, and he had, somewhat called plays with the Chiefs in the sense of suggesting this, that, or the other. Blau hasn't done any of these things. I mean, even some more of the basic, blocking and tackling aspects of the job, he hasn't done it. So that's where it's all a bit odd. That's why I think the real interesting hire to come, sure, the O-line coach for sure, but who's going to be the veteran mentor in that offense that's going to be there to help Blau do the things that an offensive coordinator needs to do. I mean,
Anthony
a guy like
Lynn, Brian Johnson.
I don't know. If I had to guess, I'm going to guess. This is a guess, so I don't know if Brian Johnson will be here, only because he's got to be pretty disappointed that that he got passed over here. Again, maybe they're all cool with it, but I don't know. That would just seem tough. And Anthony Lynn, if you're going, I don't know if that's the way they want to go either. I mean, they didn't interview him for the head coaching job, which obviously Dan Quinn knows him well, but they didn't do that. So, but you look at a guy like Darrell Bevel, for example, and I'm just throwing out a name, but he was with Quinn in Seattle. He's been a quarterback coach for several years with the Dolphins. Like a guy like that, to me, and maybe if it's not him, it's somebody like that type of profile, is what I'm wondering if they're going to bring in. It could be Brian Johnson, but I would think somebody of note's got to come into that spot, and then I think that gives us a little clearer picture of like how this is going to go. But right now,
interesting. So that's interesting. That's not something I've considered or heard. I want to make sure I'm hearing you clearly. That there could be another hire that actually may be a much more recognizable name than David Blau, and they bring him in to be what? Offensive line coach, quarterbacks coach,
senior offense assistant. Yeah, I mean, like
Darrell, like a guy like Darrell Bevel, for real.
Well, I mean, I think, like, again, just looking at it logically, he's on Miami. Miami just fired their coach, so in theory, he's available. He's got a lot of ties with Quinn. He's been a QB coach in the league. He's been, he's been an OC. He's had all those experiences, and so I'm just saying, somebody like that. Now, maybe they decide, hey, we want a quarterback coach independent of everything else because that person needs to work with Jaden, and that's top of for everything. That makes sense. But then you have, the O-line coach. I imagine that may be something that they look at it separately. The Lunda Wells tight end coach from Dallas. Part of me, I mean, this is not me playing this game, this out, but if Brian Johnson were to leave, maybe he comes over either as the offensive line coach or the tight end coach with the added label of assistant head coach or one of the passing game, run game coordinators, like one of those things to get him away from Dallas. If Brian Johnson were to leave. So things like that. And then you could have a Bevel come in as like a senior offense assistant or whatever. He can make all these titles, can whatever. But I'd be surprised, I think, if they didn't bring in somebody with some sort of experience, gravitas, mentorship.
What about like somebody from the Lions staff? That offensive line coach, Hank Fraley's been amazing for a long time now. Somebody like him. Somebody like his contacts are the Detroit staff before this staff.
Right. Well, I mean, look, the part of the issue here, again, with Blau is he doesn't know the people, right? I mean, he knows the people he's been with, but he doesn't know the league because he hasn't been around long enough. So this could very well be, not saying a Dan Quinn hire, but I don't, unless there's somebody specific in Blau's orbit that he's like, yeah, this guy is like, will be great, and Quinn agrees. I can see Quinn be like, okay, let's look at these few people. Which one makes the most sense? Because obviously he knows everybody in the league, and so does Peters. So, man, like with a Hank Fraley, I think a guy like that's only leaving if he's getting an OC job. I don't see him leaving. I mean, money's money, I guess, but I don't see him leaving to be, the number two here to this guy. So even if they're friends or what have you, he's got a pretty good job right now. So, like I said, I'm looking to see what sort of mentory type hire they make. Again, somebody has to come in there who has more experience with that job, and the head coach doesn't.
What will the offense look like under Blau?
Yeah, I think this is going to give everybody a lot to contemplate for the next several months. I think one thing we can say for sure is that he's going to incorporate the run game that Ben Johnson was using in Detroit that was, clearly a big weapon for the Lions. And it feels like, if there really was a fault line between Kingsbury and the rest of the group is, the lack of consistency in terms of just running the ball and making that sort of the lead and then, pivoting off of that to do everything else. So that would be that. And I think obviously, the what works best for Jaden Daniels. It would be insane to not say, hey, Jaden, what parts of this playbook Do you want to keep the RPO action? Just anything getting him out of pocket, whatever it might be. Those are the things you would imagine that they would keep. So some combination of that would be. But again, we don't. That's what's so bizarre about this. I mean, we can't even. There's almost nothing to look at with Blau in terms of what he may or may not do. So it is very much a blank slate, which is both fascinating and also nerving for those of us who are trying to figure out what the heck's going to happen.
One of the things we talked about early last week, in fact, I think it was a week ago today, is that there's, a decent chance they're going to hire somebody that Jaden's familiar with and comfortable with now that they've gotten rid of Kingsbury. So Blau is definitely that for Jaden Daniels. But I also wonder, given look, it's hard to evaluate this year. Jaden barely even played. Terry barely even played. So many people barely played. But I wonder if the hiring of David Blau puts a little bit more pressure. We know that there's probably immediate pressure. This is a bold move. Quinn might be tying his own future. It's hard to kind of zoom out to 12 months and to know what it really looks like without, what the 17 games looked like in between. But if he's, tying his future as a head coach to this particular hire, and I would say the defensive coordinator hire as well, does it put more pressure on Adam Peters to get more weaponry? They've got an offensive line that looks good, to get more weaponry offensively to make it easier for Blau in his first year as an OC.
I think they need to do that anyway, right? Like, I don't think it's a surprise that they need some other receiver, maybe two, to join Terry McLaurin, depending on what happens with Deebo Samuel. Speed. They just need more speed everywhere on offense, but everywhere on the roster, but on offense for sure. I mean, what are they doing at tight end? Is Ben Sinnott, John Bates, is that combination good enough? Seems unlikely right now, but we'll see. So I think those things he needs to do already. Now, the defense is where, I think we would all probably agree, needs a lot more help. So I don't know that he would face any more pressure from this. I think the question is, I wrote a story last year during all the fun times about Peters and spoke to people around the league about how he's really good at listening to a coach, understanding what it is they want, and then going out and getting the pieces for them. Okay, let's just take that at face value. Does Blau know what he needs? Like, how does Blau know? I mean, I'm sure he has a feel. He obviously played the position and all that, but like, how do they know? So I can imagine Peters, again, having more of a say here. We already have say over personnel, but even maybe more so. I don't know that David Blau is going to send him a note saying draft this guy. So I don't know if there's more pressure, but I can see Peters have even more.
Like Kingsbury did with Connerly Jr. I'm just making sure people understood the reference.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, I forget sometimes about things like that. But yes, so I can see. I don't know if Peters can have more say, but at the same time, if he doesn't have an OC who can, like, they know definitively what makes sense for what he wants to do, then he has even more sway in that regard if he doesn't have to sort of listen to exactly what the OC wants, because the OC just may not know exactly what he wants.
Last one on Blau. How would you describe this as bold? How would you describe it to somebody who doesn't know anything about it, like from a Quinn perspective?
Yeah, I'm going to use an example here I've done before. I watched the TV show Survivor, big fan, 50th season coming up. And one of the guys who's going to be in the show is a teammate of Adam Peters at UCLA. Fun fact. But what I always note about that show is there are people who come in second or third place who have no chance of winning. And there are people who go out fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth because they took bold risks, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but they gave themselves an opportunity to win. I kind of feel like that's what Dan Quinn is doing here. Like, sure, he could have hired a myriad of guys that we've all heard of before. Some of them might have been, really good hires, i.e. a McDaniel. But, who knows? I mean, McDaniel might be out after 1 year if they have success, so you want to go through that again. So it feels like this is more than just, instead of just taking somebody off the obvious lists that are out there, he went for the upside. Like I said, if in a world where Cliff Kingsbury stays and then leaves after a third year to take a head coaching job or whatever. Blau, after a year's QB coach, probably gets promoted unless, they fall out of love. So basically just skipping the 1 year and going for the upside. So I think it's like that to me. Certainly it's not, it's hardly conservative by not remotely. This is a bold move to say the least. And I think it's probably, like I said, Dan Quinn may be saying, if I'm going out, I'm going out on my terms. And this, I think that's also probably why, he moved on from Cliff. There was just enough difference of opinion to say, you know what, I got to do my thing.
Yeah. I agree with it. And I think by the way, it's an easy pitch. Now, what makes it a little bit more problematic, the pitch, not that they should care about it, but if they do care about it, we couldn't let him leave the building resonates with this fan base going back to, the Kyles and the Shawns and the LaFleurs, et cetera. Couldn't let the next big thing leave the building. That's an easy pitch. The problem, of course, is if McDaniel doesn't get a head coaching job and he instead ends up being an OC, let's say in Baltimore or Detroit, and that team is killing it next year and our team is struggling offensively with a first-time coordinator, that's going to be a tough because people will assume that Quinn would have had a shot, whether true or not, would have assumed that he would have had a shot at McDaniel. All right. What about defensive coordinator? Where are they at this point? Who have they interviewed and where does this go from here and timing, et cetera?
Yeah, I think they're probably in a bit of a holding pattern. They may very well be looking at some people who are still in the playoffs. So that's a possibility. And, we are sort of assuming that Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich, two guys that were with Dan Quinn before in Atlanta, two guys that have been defensive coordinators. Raheem Morris is a two-time head coach. Like Morris is still getting interviews for head coaching jobs. Atlanta's not letting anybody interview Ulbrich yet until I think they figure out what they're going to do at head coach. Maybe he stays with a new hire, or maybe he doesn't. So at the moment, you're kind of waiting on those two, we would think, right? So, and even like a guy like Al Harris, who would be, I think this feels like a longer shot now, defensive backs coach with the Bears. Again, another Quinn guy, because he has never been a coordinator either. That just feels like a lot of inexperience to take on. So I don't know about him, but if they're having to wait for those other two to at least before they make a call, then they're sort of having to cool their heels a bit. They did interview Denard Wilson, Tennessee Titans defensive coordinator. He went to DeMatha, Maryland. Actually was with Washington for I think a training camp way back when. I don't know that you're hiring the Titans defensive coordinator is like that sounds like a good move, but not everybody, not all coaches are, that teams are not always reflective on what a coach can or can't do. So they kick those tires as well. They met with Joe Cullen, the defensive line coach from the Chiefs, Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator with the Raiders. Again, this part feels more due diligence than anything else. But like I said, they got to wait until the other two are available, or, they've made a call that they're going elsewhere.
I mean, I don't think this is a possibility, but I'll let you cross it off my list. Is there anybody on their current staff? I mean, they haven't interviewed anybody on their current staff for the defensive coordinator position, right?
Not that we know of, no. I mean, Ken Norton Jr. has been a DC in the past.
With the Raiders, right? I think.
Yeah, I mean, statistically, it wasn't particularly impressive, but yeah, he did do it. And Seattle too. I think he replaced Quinn, I want to say, or it was like right somewhere after Quinn when he left. And then that's probably it. I just don't see that anybody else would make any sense. And if it's Norton, like if they did consider that, then that's clearly saying Dan Quinn's not changing a thing. And Norton's going to be sort of the organizer, and obviously Quinn would have a say in whatever's going to go on. But yeah, that would be the one name I think that could, if you're going to do the internal hire, if everything else falls apart, you could turn to him, I would think.
Did you end up listening to WIP last night after asking Siri how to do it?
I did for a few minutes, actually. It was unfortunate that the hosts were way too calm about it. It was very disheartening. But maybe today that people are going berserk. I think that's a fascinating situation for Sirianni. I mean, he's obviously wins, but every year they're a complete disaster. I know this wasn't a disaster; they won the division, but you could just tell like all year the offense was never clicking. Whether that's Hurts, whether that's the OC or something else, but AJ Brown, that looks like a mess again. So yeah, that's a fascinating situation.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it was like. I mean, offensively, they just the most predictable team all year long. They didn't do anything to kind of change that up. They just thought our players are better than yours. And AJ Brown didn't post for the game. I did want to ask you, with you on the phone here, to react with me to what turned out to be an interesting story. Nothing approaching the game itself in Jacksonville. But this was a reporter in Jacksonville, a credentialed reporter, not necessarily a full-time sports reporter, I understand, but a reporter in town who was credentialed attending Liam Cohen's post-game press conference after Jacksonville had lost 27-24 to the Bills. This became viral on social media last night. Listen to not the question, but the complimentary thank you from this particular reporter to the head coach. Do you have it?
I'm hitting play and it's just not playing. Let me pull it up off of Twitter just so we can. This is what happens when things don't work the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, we're the JV team.
Congratulations on your success, young man.
Thank
you.
You
Hold your head up, all right? You guys have had a most magnificent season.
Thank you.
You did a great job out there today.
Appreciate
so you just hold your head up, okay?
Thank
and
you,
ladies
ma'am.
and gentlemen, Duval, you the one, all right?
You,
keep it going. We got another season, okay?
I appreciate
Take care and much continued success to you and the entire team.
Thank you, ma'am.
That was a reporter, a credentialed reporter, in the post game with Liam Cohen. Ben is a reporter. I'm not a reporter. All right. I just spout and make things up every day here. You are an actual reporter that ends up being in that spot with all of the other people on the beat. So I'm going to ask you first for your reaction to that, and then I'll give you mine.
Well, look, I understand from a general public perspective that, somebody is saying something nice to somebody who's having a low moment. Obviously, Jacksonville had high hopes. They lose the game. And you might look at it from the human perspective and say that's very nice. And if this person was a fan, which sounds like they are, a fan or just Joe Public, not an actual reporter, I totally get it. But it is an absolutely preposterous thing that occurred. Now, from what I gather, I don't know, but I saw people online saying that reporter is apparently like a it's not a sports reporter, but like a general sort of news reporter in some way. Okay, this does happen sometimes where we get news reporters show up because they're filling in for somebody or whatever, and they don't. Sometimes they're too hard, sometimes they're too soft. They don't necessarily get the tone because they're coming from whatever beat they're coming from. But it is an absolutely preposterous thing to have said. Even beyond keep your head up, the Duval part. Could you imagine? If I went to, Dan Quinn and say, hey, man, tough year, but hey, hail or whatever, that would be insane. I should lose my credential immediately. Don't pass go. I do think, though, the real culprit here is not anything there. It's that people in the media tweeted it out as if this was a good thing, which led to the NFL doing it. And now people like me who are doing the job, people always say, ask the tough questions. Well, you can't. When you do that now, you're going to be like, hey, why aren't you being nice? This person was being nice. The NFL said how great this was. What are you doing? Stop taking yourself so seriously. And, oh, my God, it is so cringe I can't even explain to you. But like I said, I get why the outside public may not see it this way. But inside, as reporters, it is preposterous.
Yeah, so real quickly, first of all, like with most of this stuff, nobody's going to die. Everybody's going to survive. But to your point, it's just not the place for that. It's a wonderful exchange if you happen to walk up on it after the press conference is over, and this is someone who wants to express how appreciative she is of the job that Liam Cohen did this year after a loss and to console him, and maybe she knows him, whatever. But there is a setting for that conversation, and it's not during the post-game press conference. So from that standpoint, I don't know anything about this reporter. It wasn't appropriate for that point. I'm not saying it's inappropriate for after the professional setting, but that's a professional setting. And for those that would say, well, it only took 15 seconds or 20 seconds, it's hardly the point. You don't, in a reporter situation, far different than what I do, but what Ben does, they are supposed to be objective. They're supposed to be very much non-cheerleader. Now, in smaller markets, you have more of a risk of sort of a cheerleader mentality typically. It's not, that would have I can't imagine that would have ever happened in Philadelphia or Boston or New York or even here for that matter. Very nice, thoughts from her. It's kind, the whole thing, just completely inappropriate, the setting for it. She could have easily done that. And as a reporter, whether it's sports or not, she should know that that's not the setting for that if she's been a reporter before. Anyway, there you go.
I mean,
we
I
covered
would
that
say,
one.
like, we all have our biases, whether, oftentimes it's, not something that's necessarily conscious, but, you like the way somebody plays, the way somebody coaches, you don't, the opposite is true, whatever it may be. So we all come into some biases, but you still within that, you're trying to be as objective as you can. You don't cheer for the team. I mean, the no cheering in the press box is a real thing. It's not just something that people say. And occasionally somebody will screw up, or maybe they don't screw up. Maybe they just do it because that's how they feel. But oh my God, it is so nails on the chalkboard, awful that I can't really even comprehend. Again, I get it. It's not the world's biggest deal, and but from our perspective, and honestly, it should be from the fan perspective, because if you want to hear me talk to Kevin and get an honest opinion, you don't want me then also saying, "Hey, Dan Quinn, great job. You guys will get him next time." If you do, I don't understand that, because that would not be objective. Now I'm clearly rooting for them. That is the last thing anybody would want.
Yeah, Adam Schefter, I'm reading his tweet because you said people in the media cheered it, and he's the one that's getting the most scrutiny. He tweeted out, "This is an awesome exchange, an awesome post-game exchange between a reporter and Jags head coach Liam Cohen. The point here is, even for somebody like Schefter, she wasn't behaving as a reporter in that moment. She was behaving as a fan, or, as someone who had great empathy in the moment for Liam Cohen. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a human instinct. It's just that the setting for that is not appropriate at all, for anybody that's been in the business. Including, by the way, I would imagine the Jacksonville people who were stunned by it. But anyway, we move on. Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
Awesome, man. See ya.
Ben Standing, everybody. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980. going through Twitter during the break. A lot of Drake May stuff from all of you. From Mark, Kevin, your irrational and defensive support of Jaden Daniels isn't good. Drake May is arguably the best quarterback in the league. JD5 is Lumar light. First of all, I think Drake May's great. I think Caleb Williams is coming pretty quickly. I think it's really possible. I guess it's all got to be one or the other, but I think it's really possible they're going to be 3 great quarterbacks out of that draft, maybe more. All of them could end up being great, Mark. Let me just say that Jaden Daniels barely played this year. So there's nothing irrational about defending Jaden Daniels' season, if that's what you're referring to. He barely played. Now, if you think it's the beginning of the end because he's breakable and his body type, the whole thing, and that they should have taken a much bigger, stronger, physical beast in Drake May because of the injury projection, which, by the way, he didn't miss. He missed 2 games in college. He didn't miss any games last year, so this could have been the exception year. But Drake May is really good. By the way, I wouldn't base it on last night's game. Neither Caleb Williams or Drake May has yet to play a playoff game as good as either one of the 2 that Jaden Daniels played last year. I will be clear on that. That's not defensive. It's just factual. Drake May was not the reason New England won that game. He was part of it. I thought he played well. Thought he was fine, made some mistakes. Even he said didn't throw the ball well after the game. But that was a defensive-led win. Caleb Williams was magic in the fourth quarter. Jaden was flawless, essentially, in the 2 playoff wins against Tampa and Detroit. But, yeah, I mean, I still would take Jaden over the other 2. I would, but I can also, which I am, acknowledge that I'm really impressed with Drake May. Really impressed. He looks the part in every way. And Caleb with Ben Johnson really coming on. Really coming on. Where's the other one? The other 2 or 3. It's time to do the segment. If you had to redraft the 2024 QBs, who would you take first, second, third? Hashtag Drake May from HLAR. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely on my list of segments here once we, get through the coaching changes, 100%. This from my guy, Joel. Joel writes, McVay and Blau promotions seem similar, but are very different. McVay had been coaching right out of college. Also, he was promoted by Jay to run Jay's system. Blau was promoted by a defensive head coach. He's going to create his own staff and system with little experience. Yeah, I mean, I did not compare necessarily Blau to McVay, but other than to say they don't want him to leave the building, and it resonates because of Kyle, McVay, LaFleur, etc. But you're right about that. But I thought Ben mentioned something to us that was very interesting, and I had not thought about it. Could they be bringing someone else in as, an offensive consultant, offensive line coach, quarterbacks coach, somebody like Darrell Bevell, who coached with Quinn in Seattle and has been around for a long time and was part of Mike McDaniel's staff, which just got boomed. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, that'll be interesting because he is a first-time OC, first-time play caller. From that standpoint, we've talked about it before, but whenever you start talking about position coaches and who you think will be better than the other, we don't know. We have no clue. We have opinions on, front-facing people that we can see every Sunday. A head coach, a coordinator, the quarterback's coach, or the assistant quarterback's coach in this case, because he was the assistant quarterback's coach. You can only go on what other people tell you. I don't have an opinion about David Blau. I don't have an opinion about his work. We don't get to see it. You'd have to be in the building to see it. All right? So you have to talk about the things that you've been told, which for him is now a 2-year running saga. This guy's the next big thing. They better not let him leave the building. And they didn't. We'll see how it works out. He's never done what he's about to do. Chris Russell's next.